The Vorn ruled their section of the galaxy without challenge. For 20,000 years, these beings had been the top hunters with their strong, armored bodies and quick movements. Their control stretched across 17 star systems, and all creatures they met eventually surrendered to them. Commander Day maintained a perfect military stance on the bridge of the Earth ship horizon. He watched the Vorn shuttle approach through the main screen. While his face showed nothing, inside he felt worried about the coming meeting. "Captain Park says the welcome team is in position," said Lieutenant Han from her control panel. "Good. Stay on high alert," Dai answered. "I don't feel good about these lizards." The Horizon was humanity's best diplomatic vessel, designed to make first contact with alien species. Its smooth white hull contained meeting rooms, cultural exchange areas, and hidden defensive systems that the crew hoped they would never need to use. Day checked the security feeds. The reception bay looked perfect. A large open space with a long table of Earth foods and drinks. Captain Park stood at the center with 5 diplomats and 8 security officers positioned discreetly around the room. The Vorn shuttle docked with a mechanical hiss. After a moment, the airlock opened and 6 Vorn entered. They walked with predatory grace, their scaled skin shimmering under the lights. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with powerful limbs and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything as potential prey. Their body language is aggressive, Han noted, watching the same feed. Day nodded. "Tell security to be extra careful." Sub-Commander Tarek led the Vorn delegation. His head was adorned with a ridge of spines that flared slightly as he surveyed the humans. The other Vorn kept their clawed hands near their sides, seemingly relaxed but ready to move in an instant. Captain Park smiled and stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, we welcome you to the Horizon. We hope this meeting begins a peaceful relationship between our peoples." He extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. The translator device converted his words to the clicking, hissing language of the Vorn. Tarak tilted his head, looking at Park's outstretched hand. In Vorn culture, presenting an open limb was a challenge display, a sign of aggression before combat. The universal translator had conveyed the words correctly, but could not explain the cultural meaning of the gesture. "They're tensing up," Day said, noticing the subtle shift in the Vorn posture. "Captain Park, pull back." His warning came too late. Tarek made a sharp gesture with his hand. The ridge of spines along his head fully extended, and he made a high-pitched sound. In one fluid motion, all 6 Vorn pulled weapons from hidden pockets in their ceremonial clothing. The security team reached for their own weapons, but the Vorn moved with shocking speed. Energy blasts cut through the air. 3 diplomats fell immediately. Security officers returned fire, but their shots bounced off the natural armor of the Vorn. "Full alert. Security teams to reception bay now," Dai shouted, already running toward the elevator. By the time additional forces arrived, 4 security officers lay dead. The Vorn had retreated to their shuttle, taking with them samples of human technology from the reception room. Dad knelt beside Park, who had survived with a burn across his shoulder. "What happened?" "We were just trying to be friendly." "I think that was the problem." Park winced as a medic treated his wound. "They saw our friendly greeting as weakness, or maybe a threat. They didn't even try to understand." The Vorn shuttle detached from the horizon and accelerated away at high speed. Earth Command would need to be notified immediately. First contact had become first combat. Daz stood among the bodies of his fallen comrades, his uniform stained with their blood. "They see us as just another species to conquer," he said quietly. "But they've made a terrible mistake." Lieutenant Han joined him, her face grim. "What do we do now, Commander?" "We prepare," Day replied. "The Vorn think they're the greatest hunters in the galaxy. They've never faced humans before. They have no idea what they've just started." On their shuttle, the Vorn congratulated themselves on the successful first strike against the soft, weak humans. Sub-Commander Tarek examined a stolen communication device, already planning how its technology could be used to track human settlements. "These humans will be easy to bring under control," he told his team. They have no natural defenses, no real strength. They'll serve the Vorn Empire well once they learn their place. None of the Vorn recognized the terrible error they had made. They had judged humans by their physical attributes alone, missing completely the true danger of the species they had just attacked. Humans never forgot their dead, and they never, ever stopped fighting back. Supreme Commander Kozar stood tall before the Vorn High Council. The Grand Chamber was carved from a single massive crystal, refracting light in patterns that told the history of Vorn conquests. 7 council members sat on elevated platforms, their ancient scales bearing the marks of past battles. These humans are soft, slow, and fragmented, Kozar said, tapping a claw on the display table. Images of humans appeared, small pink creatures without scales or natural weapons. Their bodies lack natural armor, their reflexes are inferior, and they waste resources fighting among themselves. The council members hissed in agreement. They had heard this assessment before, about many species now serving the Vorn Empire. In a darkened room nearby, military strategist Silak hunched over human historical records. Unlike his fellow Vorn, Silak believed in studying prey thoroughly before attack. What he saw troubled him deeply. Humans had a history unlike any species the Vorn had encountered. They advanced quickly, adapted constantly, and showed remarkable resilience after defeats. Silak hurried to the council chamber, arriving as the meeting was ending. "Supreme Commander, I recommend caution," he said, his spines flat against his head in a show of respect. "Their adaptability is remarkable, and their technology is primitive compared to ours." Kozar interrupted, his own spines rising in annoyance. "We will conduct a standard disciplinary raid on their colony on Proxima Centauri IV. They will learn their place quickly." Silak wanted to argue further, but knew it would only damage his standing. The Vorn valued aggression over caution. Instead, he bowed and backed away, his stomach tight with worry. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a secure underground facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Defense Minister G faced a wall of screens showing military leaders from across human space. "The Vorn have conquered every species they've encountered," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "But they've never met humans before." The room was silent for a moment. Humanity had been preparing for this scenario since the first alien signals were detected decades ago. Admiral Lee nodded on the central screen. Her ship, the UES Thunderchild, was already positioned near Proxima Centauri IV. "The Proxima colony has been reinforced. Let's hope the Vorn take the bait. Operation Mousetrap is ready," General Kim added from another screen. "Our apparent weakness is our greatest strength right now." Defense Minister G touched a small pendant at her neck, a family heirloom containing a picture of her daughter stationed at Proxima. "Proceed as planned. May your aim be true." 3 days later, 15 Vorn warships emerged from hyperspace near Proxima Centauri IV. Their sleek, predatory designs reflected their nature, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Sub-Commander Durath, leading the attack, felt almost disappointed. The human colony appeared defenseless, with only a small orbital station and a few patrol ships. "Begin standard intimidation protocol," Durath ordered. "Target their communication satellites first, then their defense grid." The Vorn ships moved into formation, preparing for their usual attack pattern that had worked on countless worlds. Their sensors showed minimal defenses and no significant military presence. "Sir, detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's far side," a sensor operator reported. "Irrelevant. Continue the attack," Durath said dismissively. The Vorn fired their first volley at the human communication satellites. To their surprise, the satellites dispersed, revealing themselves to be disguised weapon platforms. Concentrated energy beams lanced back at the Vorn ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Durath shouted, but it was too late for 2 of his ships. From behind Proxima's largest moon, 30 human vessels appeared, moving in patterns that seemed random but somehow always placed them in optimal firing positions. Unlike the rigid Vorn formations, the human ships appeared to be acting independently yet somehow coordinating perfectly. "They're using our attack formation against us," the Vorn tactical officer realized. "They studied our approach and created countermeasures." On the planet below, Vorn ground forces landed expecting easy victories. Instead, they faced human soldiers wearing suits that bent light and heat, making them nearly invisible to Vorn thermal vision. The humans didn't fight head-on as the Vorn expected. They set traps, used the environment, and attacked from unexpected angles. After 6 hours of battle, Sub-Commander Darath made the hardest decision of his career. "All forces retreat. We have lost 5 ships and gained nothing." The surviving Vorn fleet limped back to their territory, leaving behind hundreds of dead and a third of their ships. On the Thunderchild, Admiral Lee watched them go. "Send word to Earth." The mouse trap worked. The Vorn took the bait and got snapped. Back on the Vorn homeworld, Supreme Commander Kozar received the news with rage, his spines fully extended. "This changes nothing. The humans simply got lucky. We will crush them in the next attack." But in his private chamber, strategist Silek added another entry to his growing file on humans. "They let us think they were weak. They wanted us to attack. The question is not if they can fight, but what else they are hiding from us." Supreme Commander Kozar smashed his fist against the war table, cracking its stone surface. The 5 elite guard commanders flinched at his rage. His personal guard stood motionless around the chamber, their ceremonial armor glinting in the red light. "The humans must be eradicated," Kozar declared, his voice a low growl. "Deploy the elite guard to human settlements across their territory. No mercy." The elite guard commanders bowed their heads. For 3,000 years, the elite guard had been the final solution to any species that resisted Vorn rule. No race had ever survived their full deployment. "Supreme Commander," said elite guard leader Mox, "we have already prepared battle plans for 17 human colonies." Kozar nodded with satisfaction. "Begin with their strongest outposts. Show them the true might of the Vorn." Far away on the human colony world New Sol, Commander Dai stood on the city wall, watching thousands of refugees enter through the main gates. Families carried whatever possessions they could save from the outlying settlements. The Vorn attacks had destroyed farms and smaller towns across the continent. "That's the 5th wave today," said Captain Han, stepping up beside him. Her new captain's insignia still looked fresh on her uniform. After her actions during the Proxima defense, her promotion had been automatic. "How many more can we shelter?" Dai asked. "Enough," Han replied. "The underground levels are prepared for twice this number." Below them, children clutched toys while parents carried bags of clothing and food. Medical teams directed the injured to field hospitals. Despite the chaos, the evacuation proceeded in orderly fashion. "The Vorn attacks have been brutal but predictable," Da noted, watching a squadron of fighters pass overhead on patrol. "Always the same approach: hit population centers, destroy infrastructure, then move to the next target." "They still think they're fighting a traditional war," Han said. "They expect us to surrender after enough damage." "That's their weakness," Day replied. "They can't imagine that we've been preparing for this moment since first contact." He gestured toward the city's massive defense towers. What the Vorn couldn't see were the thousands of soldiers training below ground, or the weapons factories built into the mountains. "The counter-offensive begins tomorrow," Han said quietly. "Are the special units ready?" Han nodded. "The armor-piercing rifles have been distributed. The communication jammers are in place, and our special allies are in position." That evening, as the twin moons of New Sol rose over the horizon, 300 human ships lifted off from hidden bases across the planet. Unlike typical military vessels, these were designed specifically to combat Vorn technology. In orbit, the Vorn blockade fleet detected the approaching ships too late. The human vessels moved in unpredictable patterns, their hulls covered in materials that absorbed Vorn scanning beams. Enemy vessels approaching. A Vorn officer shouted. "They're not following any known attack pattern." The human ships fired their first volley, not traditional energy weapons, but specialized projectiles that carried nanodisruptors designed to penetrate Vorn armor by finding microscopic gaps in their crystalline structure. On the ground, special human forces activated devices that created interference patterns in the specific frequency range the Vorn used for their telepathic battle coordination. Suddenly, Vorn ground troops couldn't communicate with each other or their ships. Most shocking to the Vorn was the appearance of warriors from the Tellarite and Brecken species, races the Vorn had conquered generations ago. These former slaves now fought alongside humans, providing crucial intelligence about Vorn tactics and weaknesses. On the Vorn battle cruiser Dominance, Fleet Commander Vex stood in the prisoner containment area, studying the humans captured during earlier battles. Unlike other species, who typically descended into despair when captured, the humans remained defiant. One prisoner, a female pilot named Sue, met his gaze without flinching. "You might as well kill us," she said through the translator. "We won't tell you anything." "Why do you continue to resist?" Vex asked, genuinely curious. "You must know your species cannot win against the Vorn." Sue laughed. "That's why you'll lose. You think this is about winning in the traditional sense." "Explain," Vex demanded. "Humans don't fight like other species. We don't stop when victory seems impossible. We call it total war. When our survival is threatened, there are no limits to what we'll do." Vex recorded her words, adding them to his growing report. Later, in his private chamber, he sent his findings to High Command. "These humans show no fear," he reported. "Even when defeat seems certain, they continue fighting. They have a concept they call total war that I believe we must take seriously. Their psychology is unlike any species we have encountered. I recommend immediate reassessment of our strategy." On the Vorn homeworld, Supreme Commander Kozor read the report and dismissed it instantly. "Fleet Commander Vex has been contaminated by human thinking," he told his advisors. "Replace him immediately." Kozor didn't see the messages coming in from across Vorn space, reports of human ships appearing in supposedly secure systems, of former slave species rising up, of Vorn colonies asking for reinforcements that couldn't be sent. As night fell on New Sol, Commander Day received reports of successful attacks across 12 star systems. "It's working," Captain Hand said, looking at the battle map. "The Vorn are off balance for the first time in their history." "Now we push harder," Day replied. "They expected us to break. Instead, we're just getting started." Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Nova. Through the main viewport, she could see the assembled human fleet, 300 ships of various sizes, all built or modified in the 11 months since the war began. Behind them, the jump gate pulsed with energy, its massive ring structure containing technology that no one had thought possible a year ago. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her first officer said. Lee touched the old scar on her cheek, a reminder of her first encounter with the Vorn during the Proxima defense. "All ships, commence Operation Thunderstrike," she commanded, her voice calm despite the historic moment. The jump gate flared with blue-white light. One by one, the human ships entered the gate and vanished. On the other side waited something the Vorn had never experienced, an invasion of their home system. On the Vorn homeworld, Supreme Commander Kozor was addressing the High Council when the alarms began. "Impossible," he said, looking at the emergency display. "No enemy has ever." The display showed hundreds of human ships appearing through artificial wormholes throughout the Vorn home system. The new jump technology had allowed humans to bypass all outer defenses, all planetary shields to maximum. Kozor ordered, "Launch every available ship." But the human attack wasn't what any Vorn expected. Instead of bombarding cities or population centers, the human ships targeted very specific locations: military bases, weapon platforms, communication arrays, and shield generators. Their precision was surgical, minimizing civilian casualties while systematically dismantling the Vorn defense network. In the capital city, panic spread as defense systems failed one by one. The mighty Vorn, who had only ever known victory, had no concept for how to handle an attack on their homeworld. Civilians ran through the streets, government officials destroyed sensitive documents, and military units waited for orders that never came. Their command structure is collapsing, Admiral Lee observed from orbit. Deploy ground teams. 500 human dropships entered the atmosphere, each carrying soldiers equipped with specialized gear for fighting Vorn. Leading the Central Assault Force was Commander Da. Remember the plan, he told his team as their ship descended. We take the Defense Ministry intact. We need their command codes. Captain Han checked her weapon. Resistance should be heaviest around the Central District. But when they landed in the Great Plaza before the Defense Ministry, a towering spire of black crystal, they found confused guards and panicked officials instead of organized resistance. Day's team moved efficiently through the building, neutralizing what little opposition they encountered. Most Vorn simply surrendered when confronted. After just 40 minutes, they reached the Central Command Center. I expected more resistance, Daz said as Vorn officials dropped their weapons and raised their hands in the universal gesture of surrender. This doesn't make sense, a junior officer said. The Vorn are supposed to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Captain Han moved to the main computer terminal. Using knowledge gained from captured Vorn technology, she quickly bypassed security and began examining their defense protocols. I think I understand now, she said after several minutes. They never conceived of being invaded. There's no protocol for it. Their entire military doctrine is based on being the attacker, never the defender. Day looked around at the captured Vorn officials. Your empire lasted 20,000 years, and you never once planned for someone bringing the fight to you. One Vorn, wearing the insignia of a senior strategist, answered, no species has ever had the capability or courage to attack the homeworld. It was unthinkable. You should have thought harder, Day replied. Across Vorn space, similar scenes played out. As news spread of the homeworld's vulnerable position, colony worlds began surrendering rather than face human forces. Ships that had been terrorizing human settlements suddenly found themselves cut off from command and without clear orders. Multiple Vorn fleet commanders, seeing the writing on the wall, requested separate peace terms. Admiral Lee received these requests with surprise. Their whole system is fracturing faster than we anticipated. But in a hardened bunker beneath the capital city, Supreme Commander Kozer refused to accept reality. Surrounded by his most loyal followers, he raged against the reports. Lies and cowardice. He shouted, striking an aide who brought news of another surrender. The Vorn do not lose. We cannot lose. He activated an emergency broadcast to all remaining Vorn forces. This is Supreme Commander Kozer. Disregard all surrender orders. We will gather our remaining forces for one final battle. The humans cannot prevail against the full might of the Vorn. As Kozer's message went out, Captain Han intercepted it in the captured Defense Ministry. He's calling for a last stand, she told Da, gathering all loyal forces near the gas giant Vorn 6. Day looked at the star map showing human forces now in control of most major Vorn systems. He still doesn't understand what's happening, does he? No, Han replied. He can't accept that the apex predators of the galaxy have just become the prey. Admiral Lee received the intelligence report and made her decision. All available ships, prepare to move to Vorn 6. Let's end this war before more lives are lost on either side. The last Vorn armada gathered near the twin stars of Vorex Prime, the system that had been their first conquest 20,000 years ago. 117 warships formed a defensive sphere around Supreme Commander Kozer's flagship, the Eternal Dominance. It was a fraction of the once mighty Vorn fleet, but still a formidable force. Kozer stood on his command deck, his scales dulled with age and stress. The past 3 months had seen the unthinkable, the fall of the Vorn Empire, system by system. Supreme Commander, The human fleet is arriving, his sensor officer reported, voice shaking. Through the viewport, Kozer watched as human ships emerged from jump points. The vessels looked different now, sleeker, more predatory. They had incorporated captured Vorn technology into their designs, creating hybrid ships that neutralized the Vorn's traditional advantages. How many? Kozer asked. 523 ships, Commander. And vessels from the Tellarite, Brecken, and other former subject species. Kozer hissed in fury. The final insult, to be opposed by races the Vorn had once ruled. The main communication screen activated, showing Admiral Lee on the bridge of her flagship. She looked tired but determined. This is Admiral Lee of the United Earth Fleet, to all Vorn vessels. Your situation is hopeless. Surrender, and you will be treated with dignity under galactic law. All crew members will retain their rights as sentient beings. This is your only warning. Kozer stared at the human female who had orchestrated the downfall of his empire. Without a word, he signaled his weapons officer. The Eternal Dominance opened fire, launching a barrage of energy torpedoes toward the human fleet. So be it, Admiral Lee said softly before her image disappeared from the screen. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Vorn military history. The human ships didn't fight like any opponent they had faced before. They moved in constantly shifting patterns, anticipating Vorn tactics that had been successful for millennia. Worse, they seemed to know exactly where the weaknesses in Vorn ship design were located. They're targeting our power distribution nodes, a tactical officer reported as another Vorn cruiser exploded. How do they know? In her flagship, Admiral Lee coordinated the attack with help from former Vorn subjects who had provided detailed intelligence on Vorn ship specifications. Her strategy wasn't to destroy the Vorn fleet, but to disable it with minimal loss of life. Focus on propulsion and weapons, she ordered. Leave them alive but unable to fight. After 6 hours of battle, 83 Vorn ships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors, including Kozer's flagship, could no longer maneuver effectively. Their situation was hopeless. One by one, Vorn captains began surrendering, ignoring Kozer's increasingly desperate orders to fight to the death. The Supreme Commander, seeing his authority crumble, made one final decision. He ordered his personal guard to the escape pod bay. The Vorn Empire may fall, he told them, but we will continue the fight from hiding. His escape pod launched from the Eternal Dominance minutes before human boarding teams arrived. But Admiral Lee had anticipated this move. A small, fast human ship intercepted the pod before it could reach the nearby asteroid field. When the pod was opened, the human soldiers found Supreme Commander Kozer dead by his own hand, unwilling to live in a galaxy where the Vorn were not supreme. In the aftermath, the Vorn civilization fractured into different factions. Some colonies quickly accepted human occupation, seeing it as preferable to the harsh rule they had known under their own kind. Others declared independence, hoping to establish new societies away from both human and Vorn influence. A few isolated outposts continued resistance, though their attacks were disorganized and ultimately futile. 5 years passed. The galaxy adjusted to life after the Vorn Empire. General Deh, formerly Commander Deh, stood in the observation dome of the massive Galactic Cooperation Station. Through the curved, transparent walls, he watched ships from a dozen different species dock at the structure. The station hung in space at the former border between human and Vorn territory, now a symbol of the new galactic order. Captain Han, recently promoted to admiral, joined him by the viewport. Her uniform now carried the insignia of the Unified Species Fleet, rather than Earth forces alone. The Vorn Protected Reserve is fully operational, she reported. We've preserved their species and their basic culture while removing their capacity for interstellar aggression. The reserve encompassed the Vorn homeworld and 3 nearby systems. The Vorn there could live according to their traditions, but under careful monitoring that prevented them from rebuilding their war machine. And the rest of the galaxy? Dai asked, watching a Tellarite trading vessel dock alongside a human science ship. They're calling humans the new apex species, Han replied. Some with fear, others with respect. Below them on the main concourse, representatives from 15 formerly subjugated species gathered for trade negotiations. Without Vorn oppression, a new era of cooperation had begun. Let's hope we handle it better than the Vorn did, Daz said, watching as a transport carrying former Vorn subjects arrived at the station. Power without compassion is just another form of predation. Han nodded, thinking of the countless worlds that had suffered under Vorn rule. The Vorn never understood that. They thought being apex predators made them invincible. Until they met humans. Dai finished. A small group of Vorn diplomats entered the observation dome, their once proud bearing now more subdued. They were the new generation, raised after the fall, who sought to find their place in a galaxy they no longer ruled. One young Vorn approached Dai and offered a formal vow. General, our council sends thanks for the medical supplies for the southern continent. You're welcome, Dai replied. Remember, our goal was never your extinction. The Vorn nodded. We are learning this. Slowly. He hesitated, then added, some elders still tell stories of when we ruled the stars. Keep those stories, Daz said, but add a new chapter, about how true strength comes not from domination, but cooperation. As the Vorn delegation departed, Han smiled slightly. Think they'll ever truly understand? Maybe not this generation, Daz said, but someday. After all, adaptation is what kept humanity alive through our darkest times. Through the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the rise and fall of empires. The once mighty Vorn were now just another species trying to find their way in a universe that had proven far more complex than their simple predator philosophy had prepared them for.